Hello and welcome to Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast at
We are goofing around here at RE Plus, and we're recording live from the Power Up Live Pro Studio presented by TerraHive. Thanks to RE Plus and Suncast Media for hosting us, and welcome to my podcast. I'm Sean White, and I am talking to my future good friend, Antonio Baclig. Welcome, Antonio.
Thank you, Sean. Nice to be here.
Yeah, and I think what's kind of cool is you are living in Walnut Creek, and I went to high school in Walnut Creek. I went to a lot of high schools, though. You know, after getting kicked out. No, I'm just kidding. I moved around a bit, though, and it wasn't because I was in trouble. I swear to God. And so Antonio is the founder and CEO of InLight Energy, and InLight Energy does something interesting, and I guess it's a sodium metal chloride.
That's right.
So sodium chloride, so that's just like salt.
We use food grade table salt and iron powder, and it's actually literally food grade. So literally you could eat the active ingredients in our battery.
How does it taste?
I wouldn't advise it, but it's...
Ketchup? Would ketchup work?
Yeah. Add some condiments, I think.
And so if I did eat your battery, would it make me high sodium? Like, would it increase my risk of cardiovascular disease, like somebody that eats too much salt?
Yes.
Would it taste salty?
It would taste salty. Not advised to eat it. We're not making edible batteries, but we are making safe batteries from abundant materials, right, that we can find anywhere.
Yeah. Until we run out of salt.
Exactly.
I hope you recycle that salt. Are people going to recycle your batteries? I mean, it just seems like if it's already just like salt, it's like you don't really need to go through that much trouble.
It's funny. It's obviously we're trying to make the lowest cost storage we can, but then there's less money in the recycling of it, actually. But still, these batteries are fully recyclable and have a long history of that.
Because I imagine when I eat salt, it probably comes out when I go to number one. Mm-hmm. And so maybe we should be recycling that too.
Yeah. Well, luckily we have so much salt available. We have so much iron. You also need some steel to make our batteries. You need some alumina powder for the ceramic membrane. Mm-hmm. But these are all abundant materials we can source in the US and we can make here.
You know what? I just looked it up too. And by weight, you were talking about iron. By weight, the number one element of the earth, like if you just weighed all the elements in the earth or mass, is iron, because the core of the earth is iron and it sinks down, and there's a whole bunch of it down at the inner core and the outer core. It makes, the magnetic field and all that cool stuff because iron's magnetic. And the second one is silicon.
Yep.
And so you got
Solar.
Iron and silicon.
Exactly.
And you got all these people worried about you got to recycle your solar cells. And it's it's the second most abundant element in the earth, and it's all over the place. And so it's cool to recycle stuff, but if you are going to do that, maybe there's a lot of other stuff you should be recycling first. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like the air you breathe. I don't know.
But, the story with solar, right, is 30 years ago, there's a breakthrough in being able to use polysilicon to gain solar energy. And at first the cost was very high. And so then you had all of these startups making, new types of solar panels with different materials. You had SIGs, gallium arsenide. And then it ended up, once the manufacturing scale increased and you had actual just silicon being made for solar panels, the cost dropped. Mm-hmm. And it's continued to drop and drop and drop and drop because you have this super abundant material. And that's the vision for InLight is, we're starting from some of the most abundant materials on the planet, and it's just a matter of, can we get to the scale where the cost just keeps dropping.
So sodium and lithium are very closely related, I guess. Would you say they're brothers or cousins or sisters?
I would say they are siblings. I don't want to assign... I have a daughter and a son, so I have to think carefully about which gender I would assign.
Oh, yeah. I know. You can get in trouble. I'm about ready to cancel you right now.
That's a great point, because they're in the same column of the periodic table, and that was my starting point. So I spent 8 years in the Stanford Material Science Engineering department looking for what would be the best battery for grid-scale energy storage. And it really started with the periodic table. And The problem is you start getting me talking about this, I'll go way into battery science.
Oh, I'm into that.
Oh, yeah. Well, every battery, it stores energy electrochemically, which means you need an ion that goes between the two sides reversibly, and then an electron goes through the external circuit, right? So the ion that you want, that's kind of, for me, that's the starting point for, thinking about battery chemistry is what ion do you have that's crossing over? And in order to do that at a, fast enough rate, you need that ion to be fairly small. So lithium is, is the third element, so it's extremely small.
Can't get smaller than that, I guess, unless you did hydrogen or something.
Hydrogen. But then there's actually, chemistry is super interesting, complex. Then you have hydrogen can be too small because it gets stuck to things. And also lithium can have this problem too. So we use a ceramic membrane called beta alumina that allows the ions to go through it. And actually in this material, lithium is actually too small for that material to work properly. There's other ceramic membranes that can work with lithium, but in this one, sodium is the perfect size for it because basically you have these lattice sites and sodium perfectly fits in through these lattice sites. And lithium is too small and it gets stuck to one side or the other, and so it kind of bounces around. Anyway, so that's why when you're thinking about, from a fundamental perspective, what element do you want to start off with in the battery? Actually, it constrains the periodic table a lot, and you want to have something that's small, can move very quickly, but also very abundant. And so, that's why you start at that column of the periodic table. It's no surprise lithium is so prevalent as a battery technology. It's no surprise now there's a lot of interest in sodium. I like to say I was into sodium before it was hot, before a lot of attention has come into it in the last few years. And then, everything after that, potassium is bigger. It also, when you think about potassium metal, has more safety concerns. And then everything below that is more expensive. So for me, it was about sodium and sodium metal as the starting point for the best grid battery. And that's what led me to this sodium metal chloride technology.
Okay, and I know with lithium, you have lithium batteries, which are typically primary, and that means they're not rechargeable. And then secondary lithium-ion batteries, which are mostly rechargeable. And you can take lithium metal batteries and recharge them, but we haven't really figured out how to make that safe yet, like with many, many cycles.
Yes.
And so I guess you are doing sodium metal.
Yes.
And is that similar to how that works with lithium ion and lithium metal? How does that work?
This is a great question. Great insight. So there's been actually many decades of work going into making lithium metal work. And it's still, I think there's some promise there, but it still hasn't been commercialized. By contrast, sodium metal batteries, and here we're talking about elevated temperature sodium, so it has liquid sodium on one side, different types of cathodes on the other side, ceramic membrane. There's a long history of this. It goes back to the 60s when they discovered beta alumina. So, you have NGK making sodium sulfur batteries. You have the whole sodium metal chloride battery industry that we're a part of that got started in the 80s, has a gigawatt hour deployed. So it's really proven. And the difference here, the fundamental difference is there's a huge difference when the metal is in liquid form versus when it's in solid form. So people are trying to make lithium metal batteries where the lithium is solid form. And the problem is when you have the lithium cross through the membrane to the other side, you have all these pockets form in the solid and you have these gaps, and that causes current to constrict, and then you can have dendrites grow.
Dendrites, and they're like little fingers.
Yes.
They call brain cells dendrites.
Well, different
little branches.
Yeah, but they're branches. And then that can short the battery, and that's really bad. So all of this engineering has gone into trying to make lithium metal that doesn't produce dendrites, and that's really hard. By contrast, when you have a liquid metal, the liquid flows. It self-adjusts. So it's always covering the surface. It never creates these current constrictions that then cause the dendrites. So, and this has been shown in the whole history of this technology is, you don't have that same dendrite issue.
And so you have solid and liquid. Is that a temperature thing?
Yes.
So also, do you have a problem too when you work a battery harder, it heats up?
Yeah, so that's actually good for us. So
so you like your battery to run hot, and that you might have to heat it up on purpose.
Yes.
So instead of having all this money going to cooling your battery,
exactly,
you might have to spend money heating it up.
Yeah,
or
so
it heats up anyway.
No, it's another great question. So every battery technology needs to be thermally controlled to operate in its proper thermal range. What you end up with lithium ion is you have to cool it. You have to put in energy to do that. Now, with our system, we like to say we're making big pizza ovens, So they're metal boxes, insulated. On the inside, it's about the temperature of a pizza oven, over 200 degrees Celsius. On the outside, you can touch it. It's not going to burn you when it's operating. It's just a little bit warm to the touch. And so you have to heat it at the beginning. And then the nice thing here is every time the battery cycles, every battery generates heat when it cycles because of efficiency losses and joule heating. So that just basically replaces the heat that gets lost. And under most circumstances, you don't have to put more heat in because the normal cycling of the battery just generates the heat. Everything balances out.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me a little bit about sodium sulfur batteries.
Yes.
And that was kind of a thing before we, decided to go with lithium ion. And I think they had to be like 300 degrees C, something like that.
Yes, exactly.
And it was kind of cool because we were spending all this energy trying to cool off a battery. And it's like, hey, the batteries kind of heat up anyway. And so that's kind of neat.
So it's a very similar technology. And the story here is that sodium sulfur batteries were invented in the 60s after they discovered beta alumina. Ford actually was one of the pioneers in this battery technology. And so it has a long history. And now NGK is selling these commercially. The team is actually our team today, but back then this group of people in the UK were working at British Rail on sodium sulfur batteries, and British Rail shut down that division at the end of the 70s. So British Rail decided, okay, we're not going to make electric trains right now. Too bad they didn't continue, but that was their decision. And so the team...
Darn British Rail.
Yeah. No, so many things in history, right? If only they had gone some other way. So this team that's now part of InLight Energy, but they started a new company called Beta Research in the early 80s, and they had to decide, are they going to work on this already, developed, proven sodium sulfur battery, or are they going to make really a right bench scale, like right coming out of the lab, the idea of this sodium metal chloride battery? And the reason they went with sodium metal chloride was safety. Sodium sulfur it has a challenge of it can catch on fire if the battery breaks and the two sides come together. And that's kind of been a challenge throughout its history. There's a lot you can do to engineer the safety there, but obviously that adds cost too and complexity. But sodium metal chloride has this nice property where it's kind of intrinsically safe. If the cell breaks, then the two sides, there is a reaction. It heats up a little bit, but it's not this fire, runaway thermal reaction. There's no pressure buildup, etc. So that's why they chose sodium metal chloride. And they were making these batteries for vehicles back in the 80s. So they were developing it for vehicles in the 80s and 90s. It got into Mercedes test cars, went hundreds of thousands of kilometers. They thought it was going to be the next big thing in vehicles. And then in 1999, Daimler merged with Chrysler, and they sold off this battery division. It ended up in a Swiss company. It went down a different path, and it took longer to get scaled up. And by that point, lithium ion came around for vehicles. Lithium ion is more energy dense. And so if you care about range in your vehicles, it's a natural choice. And so sodium metal chloride batteries have become this kind of niche battery where they've taken that same design. It's being sold into UPS, mostly battery systems, telecom backup, industrial backup. Is a safe battery. It's energy dense. It's actually pretty close to LFP in that regard. High round trip efficiency, very long lifetime. But because it's never gotten that same scale as lithium ion, it hasn't come down the cost curve. So I looked at this. I was at Stanford. Got very interested in sodium metal for the reasons we were talking about. And then when I learned about the history of the sodium metal chloride battery, I said, wait a minute. Back in the 80s and 90s, there was no market for this utility scale grid storage, right? But now there is, and actually this is the perfect battery for that. And if we could redesign it for stationary storage rather than using the same design for vehicles that's been, this one design that's always been used, we have this opportunity to create this really optimal battery and leverage these abundant materials. So that was the whole genesis of InLight Energy in 2021.
Great. So I took a class. It was like at Stanford, but it was online, and it was like a class about batteries, energy storage. And there was a guy there you probably took classes from. I think his name was something like Yi Kui, something like that.
Yishui, yeah.
How do I say it?
Yishui, yeah.
Yishui or something. And he seemed like he was like one of the top experts. He seemed super, super smart.
Yep.
And from what I remember, he had a company called Amprius, I think, is that? And I think it was near Tesla, just by coincidence or something like that. And he was trying to figure out how to put more silicon in the anode?
Yep.
Of the lithium ion battery.
Yeah.
And he had different ways. I can't remember if it was like strands of it or something like that.
That's
So
right.
the problem with putting too much silicon in it was that it would expand and contract and then it would crack or something like that, or it wasn't good for it. How did that work out? Is he still doing that? Or?
Oh yeah, Amprius is still around. It's successful. And now there's a lot of other companies making silicon-based anodes, like Sila Nanotech is also in the Bay Area. So, generally how they've gotten it to work has been to find the right ratio and also morphology. But, you have to solve this cracking problem. So you figure out how much silicon you can put in along with all the other carbon and graphite of the battery. So there's a lot of engineering that has to go into that, but that does increase the energy density of the lithium-ion batteries.
Maybe he should just give up and start doing more sodium, I think.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people should come to this technology. I think it's been something that has been on the niche in the battery industry, but there have been groups. There's definitely many groups who are working on it, and we know some of the researchers who are at Pacific Northwest National Laboratory. There's other companies. The company Horian used to be called FC Sonic. They're the ones that have been selling this commercially for the last 20 years, and they're a partner of ours. So there are a lot of groups, and that's really grown in the last 5 years. I think the same time I was having my realization about the technology, a lot of other people were having that too, and I think it'll continue to grow.
Great. And so is this pretty much a stationary energy storage application and not for electric vehicles, I guess?
Yeah. So that is our focus right now because that's where we see the most advantage for this technology. It could be used for vehicle. The energy density is not that far off of lithium ion. The power density is also a little less, but I want to say that, so first of all, it's not that far off, and you could envision maybe heavy-duty vehicles using these type of batteries. But also, in terms of fundamental energy density, when you just look at the reaction, actually, this technology is on par with NMC, basically the best lithium-ion batteries right now in terms of theoretical energy density. So there's a lot of room for us to improve it, and so much less, R&D has gone into this type of battery than into lithium ion. So I see the future as very bright. There's so many ways we can continue to work on and improve this type of battery.
Great. We interrupt you for a very important announcement. Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast has been brought to you by Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast. That's right, Sean White is sponsoring his own podcast, and he wants to remind you to go check out some of his classes. You can go to SolarSEAN, that's Solar, SEAN.com, and then click on the links to check out his classes. You can check out his heat spring classes, and you can also hire him to teach classes for you, like at your company, something like that. Now back to the show. So where are you at right now? Are people using your technology from your company, or is it something that you're developing, more of a startup, or?
Yeah, we are sort of a 40-year-old startup, right?
40-year-old startup?
Yeah.
Did you start this when you were born, or I don't know how old you are, but
it would be a 39-year-old startup. It was that the case.
Pretty close.
Yeah. So, we are a 4-year-old company, but we joined with this beta research company with the original inventors of sodium metal chloride batteries. And they had a pilot manufacturing line. It's in the UK. So we have that line now, and we're producing. Right now, we're scaling our production there to produce our first utility scale demos, which will go out next year. So we have our first one will be with Southern Company. We're planning to deploy that in Q1 of next year. And then we have another one with Vital Energy in California.
Cool. So how is it that it's a 40-year-old company if it seems like it's sort of a startup? So was the company 40 years ago working on this technology, and then you guys just kind of took it over?
Yeah, it's a much longer, complicated story, but the gist of it is that, the story I told about, these people coming from British Rail, they started the company, and then they were working with Daimler. So those are the people in our company. We have a handful of people.
Some old guys that were doing this 40 years ago. So what are they, 80 now or something?
We do. One of them is 80 and he's fully retired, but the others are a bit younger. Honestly, they could retire, but this is their passion and it keeps them going. And I love them, and I'm so grateful that they're
Talk
working.
about being too early, those guys.
Well, it's, what inspires me is they'd had a lot of ups and downs, right, in this time. And, in the 90s, they thought, this is going to be the next big thing. And then there were definitely down years. And, what they have told me in the past few years is they think this is the best shot for this technology right now.
Cool.
What we're doing.
Yep. And I guess probably the biggest problem that you have is just the lithium-ion batteries being manufactured on such a mass that it brings the technology like decades ahead because of all the electric vehicles. It's probably, catching up with all that.
Absolutely. So. Even if you have the cheapest materials, you still have to manufacture the battery. And, the costs the scale of the manufacturing affects the cost of the manufacturing. So, we have ultimately the goal is to get to the same scale as lithium ion and have much lower costs. But we can compete even at a much smaller manufacturing scale. And that's because the manufacturing process is simpler. You're not trying to create this micron level that's, thinner than a human hair, precise coating on electrodes and then wrap them up, millions of times. Basically, we're making ceramic tubes. We're making really big ceramic tubes that are this special beta alumina membrane material. And then we mix the iron and the salt and we pour that in. And then we have to seal it up, apply seals and weld it all shut. There's a lot of steps. It's not like anyone could do this. There's expertise here. But in terms of complexity of the process, we don't need clean rooms. We can just do it in a much simpler fashion.
So beta alumina, you've said that a number of times here. Does that come from the moon?
It's been known for 100 years. It's a type of aluminum oxide. So alpha alumina, like if you have
the alumina comes from aluminum.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Aluminium, since it's British Rail?
Yes.
You guys do that?
That's right. That's how they would say it. Yes.
And so it's a type of an aluminum oxide, and that's sort of like the separator?
It's the separator. This is another geek rabbit hole I'm going to, at danger of going down.
Let's geek out. Yeah.
But it's an amazing material because, so separators in lithium-ion batteries the lithium-ion battery just goes through holes in the material, right? But in beta alumina, it's a fully dense ceramic. So you have just, material that will not let anything pass through it except for sodium ions, because the sodium ions fit in the lattice planes of this material. They fit on the atomic level. There's holes that are the perfect sizes for sodium ions, and the sodium ions can hop right through it.
And nothing else gets through.
Nothing else gets through. So from a battery scientist perspective, this is another reason that this is the theoretically best battery I can make.
It's just like made for it. It's like lock and key or, yeah. Okay, wow.
So as a result, in battery scientist lingo, we call this 100% Coulombic efficiency. You don't have any side reactions that happen when you're charging and discharging this battery. So basically that allows you to have a really long lifetime because you don't have degradation products.
So like lithium can't get through it?
That's right.
And so is there anything like that for lithium that only lithium can go through?
Yes. So it's LLZO is one. There's other types.
So there are things. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's pretty neat.
But sodium beta alumina, again, more trivia. Beta alumina is the first material that was found that had this property. And so it kicked off this whole field. It's called solid state ionics. And it's hugely interesting from a material science perspective, but beta alumina was the start of that.
Cool. All right. Yeah, and so they talk about sometimes like different types of separators. And is there some kind of ceramic in there? What's with the ceramic?
Yes. The separator is the ceramic.
So ceramic, but then you have aluminum oxide that's beta alumina.
Yeah,
so
beta alumina is the ceramic. It's this one thing. Yeah.
Aluminum oxide is the ceramic?
Yes.
Okay, I always think of ceramic. I guess I don't know the definition of ceramic. I think of it being like fine china.
Yeah.
So that's not it?
Yeah, no. Often people talk about advanced ceramics versus traditional ceramics, but in material science, a ceramic is basically oxide materials they're hard, they're very resistant to things, they can have special properties, and you can make plates out of them.
Okay. So what is that kind of ceramic that's like they make whatever it is, like ceramic Chinese fighters and buried in wherever that place is in China? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah. I don't. In Xi'an, I think.
Yeah, there's some, like they had an army of ceramic men.
Terracotta,
the terracotta warriors. Is that, or maybe it's not ceramic, it's terracotta. That's right.
I don't know off the top of my head the type of material that is, but that is a ceramic, yes.
Okay.
And so our ceramic is a white hard material.
Okay, so it's a white hard material that is a type of aluminum oxide.
That's right.
Yeah. So it's oxidized just right.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. And so that aluminum oxide is just aluminum and oxygen. And I think by weight, the Earth is mostly, as we said, iron, and then silicon, and then oxygen.
Yep.
And so there's a lot of oxygen in rocks and stuff. No.
Yeah, all abundant materials. I was looking for batteries that were based on abundant materials that would be safe and extremely low cost and able to have a high round trip efficiency and relatively compact. So basically checking all the boxes.
Wow. It's like, the most abundant things in the whole planet is what you're using pretty much. Oh,
yeah.
Okay, great. Well, good. Well, thanks for all that. And then so anode, cathode, what's better?
Well, you need both. That's it's a good question.
Yeah, or like maybe what we could do is just explain with your type of battery, which one is the anode, which is the cathode. So like with the lithium ion battery, you've got like an anode that is like graphite, and then the cathode is what we're talking about, like the nickel, metal, cobalt, and all that. So nickel, manganese, cobalt.
That's right. Yeah.
Something like that, or iron. Yep.
Yeah. In our battery, the anode, which is also synonymous with the negative terminal of the battery, that's sodium.
Mm-hmm.
And then the cathode, which is the positive terminal, is iron and iron to iron chloride. So you could call it a iron or iron chloride cathode.
Okay, and if we were using a lithium metal battery, then the negative instead of sodium would be lithium.
Would be lithium, yes.
Okay, great.
Yes.
And then you said also potassium, closely related.
Yeah.
And are there many potassium batteries?
It's worked on academically. I don't know of any commercialization efforts with that.
Because I'd like to eat some of those batteries, because I get leg cramps sometimes. And it is kind of funny that you can eat all of these things. Like people are always thinking like, batteries, toxic, lead acid, all that kind of stuff. And it's like, you can eat lithium, it's a medicine. You can definitely eat salt. We would die without it. And potassium, I think we would die without potassium too. And so they're all things that they make humans. And, you have carbon in there, and that's like, makes good part of your DNA,
It's true.
So we need all these things. So just want to tell everybody to eat your batteries.
Yes. Please do not.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for laughing at my jokes. Well, I like talking to smart people, so I enjoyed talking to you, Antonio Baclig.
Yeah.
And maybe we could do it again sometime.
Sounds good. That would be great, Sean.
Yeah, great. And we are here at RE+, and I just saw Tor Valenza Solar Fred over there, so I think that's the tweet up. But I'm going to miss the tweet up, or maybe I'll pass it, and I'm going to go see the Johnny Weiss. I think it's like a memorial party. Mm-hmm. And so Johnny Weiss is a solar saint now. He founded SEI, and I'm going to go check out and see what his soul is doing up there. But thank you so much, Antonio Baclig, for coming here and talking about InLight energy and all this like really cool, fun stuff that I love to talk about. And we are recording live from the Power Up Live Pro Studio presented by TerraHive. Thanks to RE Plus and Suncast Media for hosting us. And thanks for listening to Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast. To find out more or to get super smart so you can understand what Antonio is talking about, take my ESIP class. That's the ESIP, the NABCEP Energy Storage Installation Professional class. And we will talk about all of these different types of battery technologies. Get yourself smart. Woo!